This is research from my book, Impact and Excellence. And what I did several years ago now is I studied, again, trying to answer that question, can we run nonprofits like government? I mean, sorry, like businesses. Um, was trying to understand what data did nonprofits have, how are they using that data, and how are people and communities better off? And what I learned in doing this research is that we had three types of organizations. The first were our high culture organizations. Those were ones who had the impact measurement data aligned with their mission and were strategically using it to make decisions. Our moderate culture organizations were ones who had they had maybe the compliance data, like the number of people they serve, that type of information, but it wasn't woven into their board meetings. It wasn't woven into their strategies. And then we had our low culture organizations that had no data. I'm not sure how they were making decisions. And so we have these three types. Now, across the board, and this is what your board needs to hear when you talk about the return on investment of these actions and activities, that across the board, those organizations that had outcomes data and were strategically using it in their day-to-day operations were significantly more likely than the moderate to low to achieve the results that all of your boards want to achieve. They had increased efficiencies. 87% of our high culture organizations had increased efficiencies versus 37% of moderate and 12% of low, right? That's how you're going to read that graph. Let's look at increased revenues. 62% of our organizations that had data aligned with their mission and were using it to make decisions had seen increased revenues in the past 2 years versus 18% of moderate and 12% of low. So when, we all have our whys, but this is my personal why. This is Sure Impact's why. Our why is to help you and your leadership teams be in that high culture category. Have the insights and data that you need to drive decisions and move your mission forward. Because the reality is, what I learned when doing this research is that less than a quarter of boards have access to the real-time outcomes and impact data. I think we saw that definitely saw that in our poll we did today. Whereas, and this research was much more scientific than the poll we did today. But the poll we did today, right, 48% said, yes, my board has access to impact measurement, and we're showing them at our board meetings, but they don't have access to real-time outcomes and impact data. And I love that that number is so high, the 48%, because it clearly shows that people interested in outcome measurement are the ones coming to this session. Those who've prioritized it and are using it are the ones that have signed up for this session. Whereas, those who aren't prioritizing it aren't even here at this session because they're not looking for ways to be more data driven and have the data they need. And that's what we find, is that those nonprofits who adopt Sure Impact are already high performing. They just want to move from importance of impact data to making it easier to have it at their fingertips, which is fascinating to me. But I want to expand and bring everyone up, because there is no reason you have to stay in a moderate culture. Because without this data, it's extremely difficult to effectively perform the following roles: evaluating performance, understanding how well your nonprofit is doing. It's also very hard to plan, to do any sort of strategic planning if you don't know how effective you are at meeting your mission. It's also very difficult to monitor and strengthen performance relationship to your mission if you don't have benchmarks or places and goals to set. How are you going to set a goal if you don't even know what your success rate is in terms of keeping kids out of the juvenile justice system or increasing their proficiencies or whatever your mission is? If you don't have metrics related to that, how can you improve them? How can you set goals and targets? Also, how can you ensure you have the adequate resources you need to get to the results you want if you don't know your cost per success, if you don't know how much it costs to get one family to a successful outcome? And you can't do that without having outcomes data. So if I'm talking to board members and I'm sharing this information with them and they aren't in our high culture group, I have to be honest with them and say, you can't do your job. This is the job of board members. And without those data points, without access to that information at the ready, you can't do your job. So this should be the number one priority of any board member if it doesn't exist. And I'm fascinated and baffled by the amount of board members who will not prioritize or fund the process of developing impact measurement at the ready when all these things cannot be done without it. And last and not least, how are you going to enhance your organization's public standing, which is what helps you get line items. It helps you increase your revenues. It helps you get donations when times are tough. All of this is so important.